All right, welcome everyone. Today is Tuesday, March 31st, and welcome to our monthly TBI author talk. I'm so excited to have Roxane Battle here today. You guys just have no idea the treat you're in for this evening. So Roxane is the author of Pockets of Joy. And Roxane, hold up your copy of the book because I have one of the originals. I have the original book cover. So you guys probably have the yellow book cover. But it was really kind of serendipitous that this is the book I picked, given what's all happened in the month of March. It was our first non-TBI specific or brain injury specific book that we've read in book club. And I knew that I wanted to incorporate this one because it's such an inspirational book. And, you know, pockets of joy, finding the pocket of joy in the everyday, even when things are kind of glum and you maybe kind of feel like crap, still finding that little pocket of joy. And so I thought this was going to be a really great book for us to read. And little did I know everything that was going to happen in the month of March to make this book even more relevant. So Roxane, thank you so much for being here this evening with us.
Thank you, Amy, for inviting me. I'm really glad to be here. You know, I before all of this happened, I could count maybe on half a hand how many Zoom calls I've been on. And now it's like I'm on a Zoom call or a couple of calls every day, you know, and I had to learn that technology really fast. But I'm grateful for the technology, and I'm grateful to be connected, and I'm grateful for those of you in the book club, Kristen and Chrissy, I see, who are here. And I'm hoping that this will be a nice time together today.
Yeah. So I'm just going to read your little bio from the back of the book. Pull up my glasses so I can read. All right. Roxane Battle is a television personality and writer with a passion for telling stories. She currently lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where she dodges snowplows, runs 5Ks for fun, and feeds homemade mac and cheese to her family and friends. I love your bio. It's so fun.
We thought about that because we wanted it to be very germane and center specific to Minneapolis. So yeah.
Yes. Mac and cheese. What do you call mac and cheese?
What do I call it? I call it mac and cheese.
But is it a hot dish or a casserole?
It's mac and cheese.
Fine.
I call mac and cheese. And if I get really fancy, I'll put a little like lobster in there, huh?
Oh, yum. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'll be good. Yeah.
So Roxane, I have had the pleasure of meeting you a few times. I believe the first time was through our friend Roshini. And then you were at our book club, or at our writing group, I'm sorry. You were at our writing group right after the book awards. And I was at that book awards because my first book was also up for an award. I got a silver, and you got the gold in your category. So that was really exciting to, like, I feel like I've known you so much. Well, and I also, you know, used to watch you on the news. So I feel like I know you so much more than I really do know you. But for those who've read the book, and so we had this slight discussion before we went live that the new version, the yellow book, has how many more? 8 more chapters in it than my book?
8 more chapters and 100 more pages. So after the blue book came out, and after I got the gold sticker for the, was it Minnesota Independent? No, Midwest Independent Publishing Associations. Once I won that, I caught the attention of a trade publisher, and they liked what I was talking about. But for Amy, you see that the blue book is more of a memoir. Mm-hmm. It's more about my time raising my son, dealing with my divorce, dealing with being on camera, trying to piece my life back together, you know, without losing it on the air. And I think when I independently published that book, both the independent publisher and then the royalty publisher said they liked the spin I put on it, that it wasn't a woe is me story, that I didn't write and bash my ex or write about the bad things, that I really tried to take a positive look at all that, thus the title Pockets of Joy, those fleeting moments when you feel like everything is gonna be okay. And so when the royalty publisher got wind of it, they said, we like what you're talking about. We like the fact that you are persevering through difficult times by looking for the good in the situation and gravitating for that. And we want more of that. We want more of that. And at that time, the book had been out about a year. And I was reading everything I could get my hands on in the mindfulness space. And as TBI survivors, you know that that's really, really useful and helpful on your journey back. And so I just devoured everything I could find with respect to mindfulness and cognitive behavioral therapy, positive psychology, because I kind of knew all this stuff innately. And the positive approach that I was taking was all rooted in that space. And I kind of just knew that. So the last part of the yellow book, which I think our book readers read, the first part is the pockets, the first 8 chapters, and that's part and parcel of the blue book you have. Then the second part, the next, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 chapters is the joy. And that's where we talk about authenticity, living an authentic life, service and generosity. Time and time again, we find that when we are going through difficult times, helping other people, making other people's day makes our day. And I think we've certainly seen that, what's happened in the last several weeks. The news is filled with dire information, yes, but there are also those stories of, people dancing on their balcony in Italy and in Atlanta and New York City, people raising their windows at the shift change and applauding nurses and doctors as they change their shifts, people dropping off food and donating. So the service and generosity is a pocket of joy, particularly in these difficult times. And I talk about that in chapter 10. Positive connections. We are made by our relationships. The quality of our relationships is the #1 indicator of our level of happiness in life. And it's interesting because we're all stuck inside with each other. I live alone, and I'm, as a writer, and as a ambivert, both the extrovert and an introvert, I kind of like spending time by myself. I just do. But all the people that are, together, that this situation is forced together, positive connections, yes, it's going to get you through, but I think there are things that we can do to really make the quality of those relationships even better, particularly at this time. And one of the things that, it's kind of I have an acronym that I came up with, and it's called LAP. So you can remember LAP. It's not in the book, so you guys are getting more than the positive connection. This is brand new material. LAP, listen. Really listen to what people are saying. Listen so that you really hear what they're saying. Not so that you can respond, but really with the intent of making that person feel heard. Because when a person feels heard, they feel seen. And when they feel seen, they feel validated. So really, really listen to what someone is saying in that relationship. And then act on what they're saying. I really can't I can't do the dishes today. Okay, well, when can you do them? Or, you know what, I'll take care of that. I feel sad. Okay, I'll sit with you and we'll talk about how you feel. Act in a way of compassion and caring. And then the flip side of that is allow other people to act in your life. If service and generosity makes us feel happy by giving to other people, then the converse is true. Allow other people to give to you. Action is a two-way street.
Yeah.
And this is just such an oversimplification of positive relationships, but just that a little acronym like that, I think really helps. It's really helpful, and it's not too much to digest all at one time. Wouldn't you agree, Amy?
Yep.
So we've got listening. Listen to what people are saying with the intent of being compassionate, with the intent of having them feel that they really are heard. Act. Remember people's birthdays, or, hey, we're going to order pizza tonight. I know you like pepperoni. Oh, so we're going to do pepperoni instead of sausage because that's what you like, right? act in sense of compassion and remembering things that are special. Hey, you're really good at that. Last I had a hard time with, but you're really good at that. You know what I mean? Just remembering, acting in a way that makes people feel validated. And then the P is pause. Chill. Particularly before you push the send key, or
yes,
particularly before you lose it and you go off on your roommate. Pause. Pause with the intent of responding rather than reacting. When we react, we let our emotions rule us. And I know I'm in the club of, gosh, why did I say that? I wish I could take that back. When we react, we let our emotions control the situation. But when we respond, we control the emotion. And sometimes that means, taking a chill pill, a little time out, just taking a break before you speak, just a sigh. Okay, let me go back into the situation with a level head. Those three things, listening, acting, and taking a pause, go a long way towards fostering positive connections.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Long way. Okay, what's the other chapter? Gratitude. It's really hard to be grateful when you're losing your job, when you've missed out on prom, like the high school kids I'm talking to, when you can't play sports, when you can't see your aging parents the way I can't, who are both immune compromised. It's really, really hard to feel grateful. And there's lots of barriers to gratitude. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that and say, oh, just be happy, just be grateful and be fine. No, you recognize the fact that there are things that make me sad. And acknowledging those feelings, saying them and speaking them out, again, gives you power over them to do something about it. Whether it's to call a friend, I feel sad, and talk it out, or go for a bike ride like I just did, 45 minutes ago, to get those positive endorphins running in my brain. But naming those emotions. And in doing so, then we get to a place where we can be grateful, because we realize what's not in our control. The situation's not in our control. What is in our control? Our hygiene, our home, and our mental health. Mm-hmm. When we practice these things, right? Taking the exercise, the positive relationships. So how does gratitude come into play in all of that? While we have lost some things, there are some things that we still have. I have my home. The lights are still on, the water's still running.
Sunshine.
Right. The sunshine is still coming in through the windows. I go to sleep in a very comfortable bed every night. And yes, there's food in the refrigerator. 5 things just like that I can be grateful for. And when we're in situations like that, we almost drill it down to the very essence, just of the smallest little thing brings us gratitude. And so if you ask your neighborhood neurologist, they will tell you that it is a scientific fact that the more you practice gratitude, the more things you find to be grateful for, and the happier you become. And the reason why is this thing called neuroplasty. It's another big fancy word. You are literally rewiring your brain to feel more joyful. It becomes a habit. Rather than looking at the negative, you form this habit of looking at what is positive. Study 21 days, writing down 3 things you're grateful for 21 days, rewires the brain and makes you feel happier.
Mm-hmm. And I was just going to say, that's one thing I always try to instill in my tribe is keep a gratitude journal. I like to do it right before I go to bed, because then I'm going to bed with happy thoughts instead of like letting the negative stuff swirl around in there as I try to fall asleep.
Right. I'm going to read a little bit. You'll find it in the chapter on gratitude, but it's also in the Pocket of Joy journal that I have. Can I read? It's not. Can I read a little bit, Amy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you with me? You're tracking with me? Am I losing you? Are you good here?
No, you're doing great. This is fantastic.
All right. All right. So I tell the story about how one Saturday morning I was really excited to go to the farmer's market. That's one of my favorite things to do in the summer, is go down to the Minneapolis farmer's market. And I woke up that morning and it was raining, and I was like totally bummed out. But I decided I was gonna go anyway. And I grabbed an umbrella and a ball cap. And I decided, it's kind of drizzling, maybe the sun come up, but I'm gonna go. And so that thought, the rain began to let up, and I could tell that the rest of the day would be beautiful, the way it always is when the sun comes out after the rain. That thought, combined with my peaceful morning at the market, was a nice little pocket of joy. If happiness is dancing in the rain, joy is defying it. It's all around us in every season. In the summer, the lush green grass and placid glass-like lakes reflecting a powder blue, golden lit sky. In the fall, panoramic mosaics of golds and yellows with changing leaves. In the winter, pristine white snow made up of individual snowflakes that twinkle like jewels in the sunlight. And in the spring, soft, gentle rain that washes away the old and makes way for the new. It's all around us if we look for it. The sunrise or sunset, the sleepy child with bedhead stealing your pillow, the cool breeze coming through the screened windows, and yes, even the cliche smells of fresh cut grass and fresh brewed coffee. Finding your keys, holding hands, the warmth breath and soft kiss of the love of your life, taking your heels off, crying it all out, the funny way toddlers misplace syllables and consonants, food of any sort, so long as it's your favorite, a yard sprinkler and the neighbor's kids, sleeping in, getting up and out after too many dark days of not being able to, reunions, embraces, winning, healing, hoping, saying yes to "Are we there yet?" Or anytime anyone says yes or no, depending on the question asked. The sound of children singing when they think no one is listening. Eating when you're hungry. Warmth when you're cold. Compassion when your heart aches. There's no denying that life gets messy and hard. We as human beings are a flawed, fallible bunch. Sometimes we get it right. Sometimes we don't. Yet if the very axis of human engagement hinges on the balance between heartache and happiness, which will you choose to see? I challenge you, rather invite you, to look for and find the joy, just like I did that Saturday morning in the rain.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I have chills. The pockets of joy are everywhere.
They're everywhere.
Everywhere. And we just have to choose to look for them.
Especially now, especially when things get hard. And, and it's like, and we can't beat ourselves up if I don't feel grateful today, or I don't feel optimistic today. I feel sad, and that's okay. But I mean, it's like people sort of accuse me of being this overt optimist or this annoying optimist. And I kind of am. I'm a little annoying with my optimism. I think I was wired that way. I don't know. But psychologists, I read this book called The How of Happiness by Dr. Sonia Lambrowski. I got it right here. It's a really, really, really great book, The How of Happiness. Her book is yellow and red, just like mine. And she says that when it comes to finding joy in life, if it's a pie, 50% of our happiness is determined by our genetic makeup.
Oh, wow.
Some people are predisposed to being more optimistic. Some people are not. And some people may be in the middle somewhere. But the point is that some people will have to work harder to get to a place of joy than others. I concede that.
Mm-hmm. I can too.
Okay. So 50% of our happiness is based on our genetic makeup, how we're wired, which we had no control over. We came to the planet that way. What's the other 40? What's the other 40%? The other 40% in this pie is our environment, circumstances. What's the neighborhood we live in, the school we went to, the car we drive, the family we came from, the neighborhood, coronavirus.
Yeah.
40% of our happiness is determined by, 10%. That's 10% is our environment. Only 10%, because the other 40%, this is the beautiful part of it. The other 40% is our attitude. 10% of what happens to us, how we feel about what happens to us, is based on circumstances. 50% genetic makeup, 40% our attitude. Think about that. If the very axis of human experience rests on heartache or happiness, which will you choose to see? 40% is how we view things. Our level of happiness is determined by how we view things. Isn't that astounding, Amy?
It is. It is. And, I see that every day in my group. And, people say things like, this sucks and this is crap and I'm never going to get better. And I'm like, well, you're not. If that's what you choose to think, that's what you're bringing into your life. And you can change that. Your attitude, you can literally change your thoughts. Nobody else can change your thoughts for you. You're the only one in control of that.
You're actually rewiring your brain. Mm-hmm. And I know that you, with the work, you're doing a lot of work in that space. And, I was talking to someone in the psychology field, a professional, and they were saying just within the last decade or so, couple decades, they've been doing this study that said that they've determined that we can keep learning and rewiring our brain for the rest of our life. Yep. The brain is much like a muscle, like the rest of us, and the way we're made up. And so it would stand to reason that if we get into the habit of looking for the joy of practicing gratitude, we'd get into the habit of looking for joy and practicing gratitude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's profound. I know, for me, the first year after my injury, I was very, very broken. I was in a lot of pain. My brain wasn't working right. I had cognitive problems, memory problems. Doctors were telling me, give it more time. And I had been a huge optimist before my accident. And I totally was into the law of attraction and manifesting your dreams. And I had all those tools in my toolkit, but I didn't know how to use them. And I was stuck in this poor me, this sucks. Am I ever going to get better? And then just one day I was like, Amy, stop it. Put your big girl panties on and get over it. And then it had a profound shift in my recovery once I started seeing all the positives. I mean, hey, I'm still alive. That could have killed me,
And I write about that same shift, epiphany, mm-hmm. knock upside the head, God knocking you upside the head, whatever it is. I write about that.
A frying pan over my head.
Right. And we all, we all get to that point at a particular state and time, and all of our journeys are different, and all of us are going to arrive at that epiphany at a different time. And I had just made up my mind that what point is it in feeling sorry for myself? And then I knew that it was hard, and I knew that it would take courage to get to where I wanted to be. And that we don't talk a lot about courage.
Mhm.
And what I want to say about courage is that it's not, having a big S, or, you know, what I say, leap tall buildings in a single bound, those are for cartoon characters and superheroes. Courage is simply willingness to try, the willingness to ask for help, the willingness to acknowledge your emotions. Because when you do those three things, try and ask and acknowledge, you set into motion a whole series of events that can get you where you need to be. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's a little baby step at a time, but you can get there. Eventually, you can, if you are willing to persevere through the difficult times. It's not easy. That's one thing I really am really mindful of not saying especially when I wrote Pockets of Joy, is like, just do this and be happy. I tried really, really hard. I mean, not to say that in the book.
Mm-hmm.
The tone of the book is just, listen, this is what happened to me, and this is how I dealt with it. There's a strong faith element in the book, but I don't sort of preach at people or, pummel them over the head or proselytize and say, gosh darn it, this is what you got to do. That's not what I wanted to say at all. I wanted to say that it's hard. It was hard for me, but I persevered and I made it through. And that's why there's a butterfly instead of me on the cover of this one. That's why there's a butterfly on the cover of the book. And for those of you who read the opening chapter to the yellow book, you know that I use the butterfly as a metaphor for perseverance, for continually pushing through. When butterflies leave Minnesota and fly 3,000 miles to Mexico to overwinter in the mountains there, they mate, and then that next generation flies back. And that cycle happens over and over and over again because the butterfly perseveres. And there are so many metaphors in the life of the butterfly when it comes to persevering. I mean, first of all, do you know what they call a cluster of monarch butterflies when in flight?
Mm-mm.
A kaleidoscope.
Really?
A kaleidoscope. There are two really interesting things about that. One, we know the kaleidoscope to be that little tube, right? Not to get too deep, but that tube is made of a bunch of broken pieces that come together to make something beautiful. Kaleidoscope helps us see the beauty in the broken pieces. And the other thing about a kaleidoscope with respect to the monarch butterfly, all those butterflies are flying in concert with one another, and they're huddling together, and they're protecting one another when the storms and the winds and the trade winds blow and the predators come. Those butterflies are forming a kaleidoscope. They're protecting each other. And even though they might have different shapes or hues or sizes, they're all coming together to get each other through the storm. Positive connections. Mm-hmm. Those monarchs are forming positive connections. And then the third thing about the monarch is that when it's crawling around the ground as a fuzzy caterpillar, inching up that branch, wrapping itself in a chrysalis, and it's confined in that chrysalis all by itself. That's when moments of self-introspection, that's when we really do the tough work, are in those moments of solitude. When we ask ourselves, what do we really want? How do I really feel about where I am at this life? And if I've lost this, what can replace it? And what is it? And where is it? And how can I get there? Sometimes those moments of self-introspection, when we're alone, can get us to the next place that we want to be. Just before the monarch emerges from the chrysalis, it changes from opaque to clear, transparent. And you can actually see the orange wings of the monarch inside the chrysalis just before it emerges. And so the third lesson I kind of take from the monarch is we can only be truly free in life when we become transparent with what is holding us back. Naming our feelings and emotions, and sometimes letting go of past hurts. The last chapter in the book talks about forgiveness. And I think that that's a really big pocket of joy, because forgiveness isn't about you, about the other person. It's not about that other person getting away with what they did. Forgiveness is about you. It's about getting that monkey off your back and stop carrying that hurt around. It's a shift in your thinking so that you can let go and move on with your life and set yourself free. Do you think the monarch is like upset, shake his little tentacles at the creator because it was a fuzzy caterpillar and had to be stuck in that chrysalis 14 days by itself? No, it doesn't have a care in the world. Monarch's free because it let it go, just like Elsa, let it go. So lots of lessons there.
Yeah. Yeah, I had no idea though that was called a kaleidoscope. That's a really neat little story.
Yeah.
Roxane, can you tell us a little bit about your process of what brought you to writing your book?
Mm-hmm.
How far out were you from your divorce and everything when you finally started the process? Or did you start it while you were going through it?
I'll answer both of those questions. Pockets of Joy was bless you. Pockets of Joy was some 20 years in the making. I really loved being a mom. And I started writing little stories about my son, and I would just kind of hang on to them. Actually, I was that annoying optimist who would go in the newsroom every day, and I would tell people the cool things my kid was doing, and they'd say, "Write it down, Roxane, write it down." So I did. I would write it down. And so I'd write, I'd pick it up, I'd put it down. I'd pick it up, I'd put it down. I went through the divorce when my son was 11 months old. And I'd write it up and put it down. Then when Jared turned 21 years old, I knew that really I completed his childhood. He was an adult. He was soon to graduate from college, and I had launched him. And I went back and I picked up all those manuscripts, and I was like, maybe I should take another look at this. And so I started writing. I gathered all the manuscripts and everything, and it took me a week to piece together what you have there in the blue book. Took me, because I had been writing on it for so long. And then I took it into Beaver's Pond Press, where we self-published, and through the editing process and the proofreading process, they put together I felt a really beautiful ditty of a book. I was really, really happy with how that book came about. And then, as I mentioned earlier, within the year that we came out with Pockets of Joy, Whitaker House Publishing out east got wind of it. And they said, we're going to take this, but we want more. And they gave me a book contract. And I had 6 weeks to write 8 more chapters, the last 8 chapters of the book. And then we launched, and the book did really well commercially. It went to the the category deal. It spikes in and out of the top 100 bestseller list in single parenting, television performers, divorce, and motherhood, I think, are the categories.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that was one time in my life where that optimism paid off, maybe.
Did you find it like therapeutic and cathartic to like get it into its final form? I mean, it sounds like you were writing throughout the whole 21 years of his life. But when you finally sat down and put it all together, what was that like? Was it kind of soothing for you to
It
put
was
it in?
eye-opening. It was really eye-opening. And I cried when the book was finished, because for two reasons. I'd always wanted to write a book, and I did. And so that was a major, major bucket list. That was a major life goal that I had accomplished. And then I read Pockets of Joy when it came back from the printer. I sat down and I read it cover to cover in one sitting, and I was like, this is your life. And when you see it and you see what you did, how you persevered and how it all turned out, when things were happening in the book, when, that eating just a chicken McNugget for dinner, and I read about that. And you didn't know how it was going to turn out. I didn't know that I was going to, land an anchor job. I didn't know that I was going to go on this fabulous cruise. I didn't know that how things were going to turn out. And so when I sat there, and you've got this segment of your life in its totality from start to finish, it's very moving and very validating, and life-changing, really. It's like, heck, I did that. What else can I do?
Right?
I did it. I made it through. And I hearken back to that time, and very difficult time in my life, when I'm faced with difficult times now. I guess my editor said, Roxane, the thing that I took away from Pockets of Joy was that you didn't want your dignity, that you were fighting for your dignity. And whatever that took, that's what you were willing to do. And I look back and I think about that, to have people sort of peer into your life and comment on it that way, is very eye-opening and empowering. Very, very empowering.
Yeah. When I didn't set out to write a book. I just set out to write blog posts about my journey. And I'm so grateful that a friend pushed me to publish those pieces. I was on Huffington Post at the time.
Yes, and you did very well on Huffington,
I
actually.
did very well. Yeah. And, I had no idea my words would impact so many people. And I'm so grateful that I wrote while I was feeling it. Cause I've been reading my book out loud on YouTube, on Facebook every night. I've been reading a chapter a night.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, wow, like I kind of forget where I was then and where I am now.
Exactly. Right? Like things that you took for granted, that you don't think about, that you persevered through. Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds you. I have to ask you, so do you see your own personal growth when you look back at what you wrote?
Absolutely.
And how do you feel about that? What impact does that have on you?
You're talking about the transparency, and I was very, very vulnerable in these words. I was sharing how I felt. I mean, I can't remember if it's the first book or the second book. I even talk about sex after brain injury because.
Oh, you're braver than I was.
Things change, and it's important for people to understand that, but nobody talks about it. And I remember when I gave my mom, it's the second book, because I remember I gave it to my mom. I got back to my apartment. I put my key in the door and I went, I just gave my mom a book with my sex life in it.
No, I have, I've avoided that topic my whole life with my mom, I'm proud to say. She's still curious, and she will be curious forever. I can't do that one. I can't do that one. I can't go there.
And I can't even I don't even ask if she's read the book.
So how are you doing now?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm doing really well. I'm 6 years out now. And I'm still, like, today and yesterday I've had a bad headache. It's still one of those things that still happens, but they're not nearly as often. They're not nearly as, well, they're still sucky, but they're not quite as bad as they used to be. But, I'm back. I would say the things that have stuck with me the most are the fatigue. I get fatigued very quickly. I can't do a full day like I used to. Like if I go to a conference, I know that for 2 more days I'll have to take the day off. So fatigue, and then like cognitive fatigue. Like I start getting fuzzy as the day goes on. Um, and those are the things that I definitely still see in my everyday life. But from where I was, I could, like, in my book, I talk about I didn't even know how to use the ATM machine. I had my card out, but I had no idea what I had to do with that card. And getting gas at the pay at the pump, it asks for your zip code and then enter.
Right.
Well, it didn't say enter. It was just a green button. And like you would figure that out. You're like, oh, green is enter. But I couldn't figure that out. I literally had to like get in my car and drive to a different gas station. So when I look back at that to where I am now, you know, I've come so far and I'm so grateful for it. And like I said, it was really that pivotal moment when I said, Amy, put your big girl panties on. You got to get over it. Like this happened to you for a reason. What's the reason? Figure it out. And
Yeah, you know, that's
this
one of
is
the
the
things,
reason. I
you
was
know,
meant to write about it.
you know, and I think that, you know, there's what happens to us, you know, the life we plan, and then there's the things that happen to us that kind of take us, bless you, take us off course a little bit, you know. And one of the things that I have found is that rather than saying, crap, this happened to me and I'm pissed off about it, you be mad for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Again, that's about acknowledging those not so nice, pretty emotions. You have permission to be upset.
Mm-hmm.
But after a while, you got to do something about it. And so what has helped me is that, yeah, this sucks. This bad thing that happened to me with divorce or, you know, whatever. What can I learn from it? And how is this going to make me a better version of the person I already am? And I think that that was sort of the underlying theme or attitude or message when I was writing Pockets of Joy, is that I am trying not to succumb to the situation. I am trying to preserve my dignity in this situation. And I am really trying to become a better version of myself than I was before this happened to me. And when you look at it that way, I think that helps fuel the courage, that fuels the perseverance that gets you to the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You know, you're absolutely right. You have that. It's okay to be angry and pissed off. And I call it kind of the grieving process. You almost are grieving a person that you are no more.
Oh, you're absolutely, it is
Mhm.
grieving. It is. You know, and the thing about those kinds of emotions is that if we don't acknowledge them, here's a little, what we resist persists.
Mhm.
What we resist persists. If we don't acknowledge like I said earlier in the call, you know, we don't name those emotions, they're going to stay there with us. If we don't say I'm sad, if we don't say I'm scared, if we don't say I'm really pissed off, I'm really mad this happened to me, I'm scared, you know, I feel really, really, I'm grieving this, as you said, you know, it's okay to acknowledge those, but we're afraid to do that. But again, the brain is just, it's wired to walk us through. You know, it's wired to walk us through those emotions, and whether it's, you know, through help with a counselor or, you know, talking therapy or with friends or whatever, right? We've got to name those emotions so that we can deal with them and move past them and take the power away from those emotions of controlling us. Wouldn't you agree with that, Amy?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yep.
You know, the question I keep saying, you know, the brain is wired, and I talk about neurology, and I talk about, you know, the path neuroplasty and that kind of thing. I understand, and I certainly have to acknowledge that anyone with a TBI, there's a little bit of extra work involved there. Or there are other issues, and I don't mean to oversimplify that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, like depending where you damage your brain, like the frontal lobe is what controls your emotion and your anger. And so people who have a major frontal lobe injury have a lot harder time getting past anger and that's part of the actual brain injury. But there are ways to rewire it. The neuroplasticity is incredible. But you have to be willing to work for it. Yeah.
And that's we have to be willing, which touch on another point, is that we're afraid. It's a fear.
Yeah.
We're afraid of what we don't know. We're afraid of this new type of our life. But with the right support, talking it out, what you're doing with these calls and your book, it's so helpful to so many people. I mean, Amy, I really think at the end of the day, no matter what we've been through, we all need each other. I think great solace in community. And that's what we're all missing right now is community, because we're all sheltering in place. When I was on my bike an hour ago, riding around the chain of lakes, I'd look to the left and I'd see parents out on a tennis court with their kids, a little top, playing tennis. And I'd look to the right and there's a couple walking their dog, and I'd look ahead of me and there was, a group of kids, biking on the trail together. And we're all finding comfort in each other. And that's, at the end of the day, is what's going to get us through. You writing your book and you doing your video conferencing and your calls and your book club, me, writing the book and talking and, putting myself out there and being vulnerable and being transparent and being authentic and saying, I hurt, I cry. Yeah, I had this great life on TV and all these behind the scene things happened to me. And yeah, it was really cool. And I met a lot of famous people. But you know what? There was another part of my life that really sucked. And I had to do a lot of work to get to the other side of that. It's those kinds of conversations, those honest, heartfelt conversations with no veneer.
Yeah.
Although I won't be talking to my mom about my sex life.
Do you know Connie?
But
Connie Anderson.
Those kind of conversations is what get us through. Connie Anderson.
She was my editor. She when she read that piece, she was just like, I know a little bit more about you than I needed to right now.
The book on TBI was TMI.
And it's not at all graphic, people. Don't worry. I just talk about it.
Yeah, I think we need these common conversations, and we need each other more than we ever have before.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I've been doing I started last week. I've been doing these Zoom calls for my TBI group, just like a meetup, like, hey, anybody that wants to hop on. And I've had like 80 people on these calls, and they just are looking for people to hang out and just a way of belonging. And I finally figured out you can do breakout groups on Zoom.
Oh.
Yeah, kind of blew my mind when I figured that out. So then I can put these 80 people into small groups so they can all talk amongst each other. And, we need community. And right now, when we can't be part of community, we have to find creative ways to be part of community. Mm-hmm. And always finding those pockets of joy. And like I said earlier, it was so serendipitous that I picked this book, because I think I asked you maybe January.
You asked me a long time ago.
A few months ago. Yeah. And I was so thrilled you said yes, because I know you are one busy lady.
Oh, well, yeah. And it's so interesting. I'm doing a lot more of these calls now, because obviously the groups and the speaking, have all been sort of pushed into the fall. Will you replay this?
Yeah. Yep. I'll put it up on my YouTube.
Okay. Awesome. I hope that people find that helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here and be a part of my book club. And lots of really great comments in our Facebook group on the book. And like I said, I was really confused when someone was like, oh, it gets really good on 138. And I'm like,
whoa.
It only goes to
so I want you to send me your address, and I'll send you the Pocket of Joy journal.
Oh, thank you.
I'll send you the Pocket of Joy updated book. And then I have, hold on 6 seconds. And I'll send you Pocket of Joy note cards.
Oh, look at that. Oh, you talked earlier about remembering people's birthdays. And I'm one of those people. I put them on my calendar and I mail out birthday cards. And I have friends that are just like, how do you do that? And I'm like, it's called a calendar.
And that's another important thing. It right now it's just the itty bitty little things that are going to get us through.
Mm-hmm.
Smallest little act. I mean, the text. I'm getting text messages and in DMs and that kind of thing. It's just a little itty bitty things that let people know that people who call in to check on me. People know I live by myself, and so they're calling to check on me. Are you doing okay? You got what you need? Are you good? That just
Yeah.
means everything.
I put out on Facebook. So, like I said, my mom, she's in her 80s. She's immunocompromised. So she can't go anywhere. Plus, the libraries are closed. My mom reads like a book a day, maybe 2 days.
Oh wow.
And I put out on Facebook that she needs some books. And somebody I barely know, I've met her once in real life, she mailed my mom 2 boxes of books.
See.
And my mom was just like, are you serious? It meant so much to her. So,
What kind of books does your mom like to read?
she's really into like the Janet Ivanovich type books, like those little mysteries, but they're light and airy, and like Mary Higgins Clark, and who's the local author that writes the Cupcake? Oh, I can't think of her name. Joanne Fluke.
Okay.
Like she's into those just like cutesy sort of romance, but not the smutty romance. Not like my book, no.
You said it, I didn't.
I could see you were thinking it, Roxane.
No, not at all. No.
And I had someone send me this card. I hope you guys can see how beautiful it is.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
It's got like little glitter waterfalls, and it says "Scatter Joy." Ralph Waldo Emerson.
That's wonderful. What I did see is your tattoo, which is so apropos.
This too shall pass.
For the time that we're in right now.
Yep.
So I want to tell you
this before my accident. Let me tell you this. I had
really.
People think that it was because of my accident. I'm like, nope. But this too shall pass.
So there was a friend told me this story. It's a parable that there was an emperor who wanted a ring, and he told his servant or whoever, he said, I want you to inscribe on the inside of this ring a phrase that will make happy men sad and sad men happy. And do you know what that phrase was? This too shall pass.
Really? What a fun little story. Thank you for
phrase,
that.
Yeah, that will make happy men sad and sad men happy. So I got all these little corny things in my head.
And I wanted to say one thing too. I can't remember if it was in your book or if I heard you say this in person. You talked about your hair and how when you were in the news and
I wrote about it in the book. Yeah.
Was it in the book?
Yeah, when I was down in Orlando, I think it was the year 2000, or maybe before then. Maybe it was year 2000. Disneyland opened up and did this big, huge media splash, and media came in from all over town, all over the country, all over the world, and we were on this platform. And they had the tech crew there, with the microphone and the sound, and on the hour, every 15 minutes, based on where you were in the country, whether it was, the Eastern Seaboard or, the Midwest, Central Time, Pacific Time, you got up there and you did your hit for your show, your live shot. And I remember looking at the anchors from Miami. They were this big, and they had the long flowing blonde hair, and they had these cute little jewel tone halter tops and, form-fitting white pants. And here I was, in khakis and a polo shirt, and my hair was fuzz. It was just the humidity, it just wreaked havoc on it. And I remember feeling so inadequate. I just felt like I remember I never forgot that feeling. But at that moment, Amy, I had a moment, and I wrote like you had a moment, and I wrote about it in the book. And I said, wait a minute, I don't care what my hair looks like. I don't care if my boobs are not hanging out in a sexy halter top. I don't care if I'm winning a poll. I'm really good at my job, and that's what I'm here to do, and that's what I'm going to do. And then all these years later, my hair is in.
I love your hair. I just remember you talking about how in the newsroom they made you, like straighten it and wear
Oh yeah, yeah.
professional.
It was just this conformity, and who'd have thought that we'd have to have legislation, the Crown Bill, where women of color didn't have to be discriminated against based on their hair. This is how my hair grows out of my head. And it wasn't until the very, very last few years that I was on the air at CARE, even though viewers called in, that I was able to wear it this way. Other times I just had for the part and parcel of my television career, I had to straighten it, which is just crazy when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I absconded with the suits and the heels, and I'm like totally boho now, with booties and ripped jeans and big tops. I'm free. I'm free to be who I am.
Authentic.
I am who I am, and I find great joy in that. Absolutely.
Well, Roxane, thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful evening having you here, and I can't wait to post this in the book club. I know everyone's going to love this video.
Oh, good.
Like I said, I know you're a busy lady, so I really, really appreciate you
Well,
being here this
I
evening.
just want to congratulate you on all the good work that you're doing. You're helping people that you don't even know. You don't even know the ripple effect of what you're doing by being brave and writing 2 books about your story and creating a community. Amy, yay, rah, 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 rah. Go, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you. And, back at you, I was so bummed. I was so sick when you gave your talk at Team Women. I was down for like 2 weeks. It was awful. But you are inspiring so many people with all of your speaking and your books. And, that's what we need right now. We just need a little more joy.
Yes, we need each other. We need those pockets of joy, and we can find those pockets of joy in each other.
Well, thanks again for being here. I really, really appreciate it.
Good to be with you, Amy, and all the best to you and everybody in your book club. I wish you all the very best, and we will get through this one day at a time.
Yep.
Wishing you many, many, many pockets of joy.
Thank you.